Hi, my name is Greg Case, and today we're going to make a German chocolate cake. This is a classic American cake, even though the name might fool you. It's called a German's chocolate cake because the family that produced the chocolate, the name of the company was Germans. That was their last name. So this is the German's chocolate cake. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to combine the water and chocolate, and we're going to turn this on to melt, and we're going to do it at a very low temperature because chocolate is sensitive to heat and we don't want to scorch it. So we're going to turn it on as low as possible. While this is melting, and we'll give it a stir once in a while just to make sure that it doesn't scorch. And it's going to take 2 or 3 minutes. So while that's happening, we can prepare our pans. And to do that, the fastest and easiest way to do it, I think, is just to spray some grease on them, on the bottoms and sides. And I use parchment paper. Nothing ever sticks to parchment paper. Very safe item here. Then we're going to spray the parchment paper. And these are ready to go. And so let's check the chocolate. The chocolate is melted, and now we're going to set it aside to cool while we make the cake batter. So we have our butter and sugar in the bowl here, and we're going to cream them just to combine them. The butter is at room temperature, and we'll start off slowly just so they mix together. And once you start to blend, you can increase the speed. But in this case, we're not really trying to whip a lot of volume into this. We just want to combine them. There's a very high amount of sugar in this cake, and the sugar makes the cake moist. So we don't need to whip a lot of air into it. And we're also going to fold in egg whites at the end that help aerate the cake and give a nice light texture as well. Okay, it's starting to smooth out a little bit, and that's what I want. Okay, it's a more solid combination. We're going to add the chocolate now, and we're going to do that in 2 parts. With the machine off, we're going to add about half of the chocolate. And stir that in. Again, we just want to mix this together. We're going to add the rest of the chocolate. Okay, while this is stirring together, we're going to add the egg yolks. Okay, now we should stop the machine once and scrape it down to make sure that we don't have any lumps or anything on the bottom of the bowl. Okay, so now we're going to mix our dry ingredients and our wet ingredients. We're going to alter them into the chocolate batter. And in the dry ingredients, I have the flour, salt, and baking soda. And here we have buttermilk. We're going to put 1/3 of the dry ingredients in first at a very low speed so it doesn't come splashing out of the bowl. Okay. You can pick up the speed a little bit. Okay. So when you're stirring in the dry ingredients, and then now we add the liquid ingredient, which is the buttermilk with the vanilla, you want to do it slowly because you don't want to overwork the batter. However, you do want to beat up a little structure to it so that when the cake rises, it's able to hold the air. So you do want to make sure it's well combined. Okay, so, and now we're going to put in the other 1/3 of flour, another 1/3 of flour, or the dry mixture. And beat it up a little bit. Then the remaining buttermilk and vanilla. And then the rest of the dry ingredients. Pretty easy, right? However, we should scrape the bowl one more time. So we stop the machine, take it off the stand. With a rubber spatula, we'll scrape it one more time. And just beat it for 1 minute. Or less. Okay, so now it's nice and light and fluffy. It looks like chocolate mousse. So we're going to stop this mixing, and we're going to take it off the machine, and we're going to make it even lighter and fluffier. And the way we're going to do that is we're going to beat the egg whites. I have the egg whites here in a separate bowl, and they're at room temperature. And there are 2 things that are important here. The egg whites must be in a perfectly clean bowl, and most people don't have the luxury of having two mixing bowls. So what you'd have to do is transfer your cake batter out of this mixing bowl and make sure you wash it very well, because if there's any residue of fat in the bowl, it will prevent the egg whites from whipping. And the reason why they're at room temperature is because they're protein, and we want to beat as much air as we can into them. And when protein is warm, it'll expand, and we'll get bigger air bubbles and a lighter cake. So I'm going to put the egg whites on with the whisk attachment. So we'll start medium. And then when it starts to turn frothy and aerate a little bit, like it's doing now, then we'll raise it to high. So as it gets close to being ready, you'll see that the whisk is actually leaving ribbons, trails in the white. And so it's close to being done. But it's still a little wet looking, so we want to make sure it's a little bit stiffer. Now it's looking a little dry, but it's still glossy, but you can distinctively see the shape of the ribbons in the whites. Now we're going to fold the whites into the chocolate batter. And we'll just do it all at once, because this is it's a pretty soft batter, so it should be pretty easy to fold this in. So we just want to pour the whites over the top. And to fold, you bring your spatula into the center of the bowl, and you're going to lift from the bottom and rotate it back over the top and turn the bowl as you go. So you just go round and round, a circle from the inside to the outside of the bowl. And you want to do this as very gently and quickly as you can, because you don't want to lose too much of the air that you've incorporated into the whites. And that looks pretty good. I don't see any more of the whites. And yeah, it's well blended. It's not streaky. So now we're going to divide it between the cake pans. I think we're good. Then we're going to level it with a spatula. Push the batter out to the edge. It doesn't have to be perfectly level, because when it goes into the oven, the heat will sort of soften it, and it'll distribute. But we don't want any air pockets, so we're going to tap it on the table. Tap, tap. And then we just repeat the same process with the other layers. And then we're going to be ready to put it in the oven at 350 for 30 minutes. Now we're going to make the filling for the German chocolate cake. And this is what makes this cake. And this is what makes this cake an American cake. It is gooey, it is sweet, it is very flavorful, and we're going to make, basically we're making like a custard. We're sort of making our own sweetened condensed milk. We have evaporated milk, sugar, egg yolks, and butter. And we're going to combine them all in the pan and melt it over a low heat, and then cook it until the batter thickens like vanilla pudding. And it's very easy to burn this, so you have to kind of stay with it. And in the beginning, you can just kind of stir it slowly to make sure that it doesn't scorch, but it gets to heat up and the butter melts. But once the butter melts, you have to stir it more rapidly. Okay, so it's starting to thicken up now. And the way we want to test it is, I'm going to pull the spatula out of the batter, and we can draw a line across the custard. And if it will hold there for a minute without running down, it's ready. And that's what it's doing. So we're ready. We're going to strain it into a bowl and then cover it with plastic wrap, and it needs to chill until it's thickened for about half an hour, and then we'll mix in the nuts and coconut. So now the custard's chilled and thickened, and we're going to combine it with the toasted coconut and the pecans. And this is going to be the filling and frosting for this cake. And this is another area where we come into being, this is Americana, okay? It's simple, it's somewhat sloppy, there's no like fancy decorations to it, it should look very casual. And it's just going to ooze and drip and be sloppy and voluptuous and luscious. So we have our cakes that we've unmolded from the springform pans. We ran a knife around the edge to make it easier to take it out of the springform pan. And we set them out on our plates, and now we're ready to assemble them. And it's this simple, the stacking method. So we're going to put about a third of the mixture on the base layer. Okay, so because the filling is a little thin, we want to bring it to the edge, but we don't want to push it too far over because then the whole thing will just run out and be a total mess. We are a semi-mess because you do want it to drip a little bit. So that's good because the pressure of the next layer will also help push that out a little bit so it drips. Okay, so put half of what's left. Do the same thing, repeat the same process, pushing it out. And then we put the top layer on. Let's just scrape all the filling right into the middle. And this one we're going to push out until it actually kind of does spill over a little bit. All right, so this is an American German chocolate cake, a classic. Looks pretty good, right?